Video 7, our first look into putting our pip counting skills to practical use. We'll be looking at 3 positions to help answer the question, do we cube with a race lead? We will talk about race estimation, do some examples, and start to identify when an estimate is good enough and when we need an accurate count. At the end of the video, I will share a useful trick that I use when counting during live play that I think will help you. Our first position we'll be looking at, this position. This is a straight race, just bearing off the checkers, so there's no consideration for being hit or any gammons. So is this a cube? To evaluate the position, do a quick count. 50, 60, 65, and 6 is 71. Same on both sides. So our pip count here, 71 to 71. No race lead, but we are on roll, and that is worth something. And when you have a balanced position, most of the checkers are on the board, being on roll is worth about 10%. So for this position, this is not a cube. We decide not to cube. We have 0 pip lead. This is a 0 pip percentage lead, and we are about 60% to win. So we decide to roll the dice, and we roll 4 and 1. So we take a checker off, and we decide to rebalance our position, pick up our dice, ending our turn. Now our opponent's on turn. They evaluate the position, decide that it is not a cube, and they roll the dice, and they roll 2-1. They play 2-1, taking 1 checker off, pick up the dice, ending their turn. We reevaluate the position. We're a little better now. Is this a cube? Just for fun, we'll recount the position each time for practice. 50, 60, and 6 is 66. Our opponent has 50, 60, 65, and 3 is 68. 66 to 68. We have a lead now. A 2 pip lead. Is that good enough to cube? It actually is not good enough to cube. If we were to cube this would be a pretty big mistake, and our opponent would have an easy take. So this race, as it stands, we have a 2 pip lead. As a percentage, we have a 3% race lead and 64.4% to win. So we decide that this is not a cube, and we roll the dice, and we roll 6-1. Take a checker off. We decide with the 1 it's best to fill our blank 2 point, pick up the dice, ending our turn. Our opponent's now on turn to decide if they should cube or they should roll the dice. They evaluate the position and decide that they are not going to cube us, and they roll 3-1. Take a checker off, decide to rebalance their position this way, that's their best option. Pick up the dice, ending their turn. Same situation. We're going to look at the position, decide if it's a cube or not. Now where are we? 50. 55 and 4 is 59. Our opponent has 50, 61, and 3 is 64. 59 to 64, we now have a 5 pip lead in this game. And this is a cube. Now at our current pip count, we have a 5 pip lead. This equates to an 8.5% race lead and 72.3% to win. Now these percentages, this one is the important one. There will be a separate video just on this and a shortcut that I use to get to these percentages, which is great if you hate math. A little bit of a help here, and it's quick. And this number, there are methods that we can use to help us. This is a double take, and if you're not using anything right now, this will be your first step to more accurate play. especially in race situations like this where there's no contact. Now the best way to look at this is as windows of opportunity. If we have a race lead, 8% or better, we should be cubing. If our opponent is not trailing by more than 12%, they have a take. And it's important, if you're new to the cube, to not think of the cube as a sudden decision where you have to make a decision that comes out of nowhere, but think of the cube more as the game progresses. There's a window of opportunity where there's no double, it's incorrect to double. This moves into a window of double take and then moves into a window of double pass as one of the player's positions continue to improve. Now, it can happen. One side rolls extremely well, the other not so much, and it goes right from a no double right to a double pass. And with examples, you can learn more about that, but it's most important to continue to look at the cube, and if you haven't done this, to start to look at the cube as something that progresses from a no double to a double take to a double pass, and that will also help you remember as you're playing, as you improve your position slowly, you have to start looking at the cube on every turn. And in this case, this position went from no double on our first decision. Second opportunity to make a decision was also a no double. And our third opportunity is our position continuing to improve. Our position became a double take. And not missing this and getting the cube correct will increase your win percentage. And what's important here is you are unable to get this accurately if you're not counting pips and if you're not converting that to a percentage. So that will end our first example. Our second example will be very different and should be an eye-opener for a lot of players. This is the starting position for the second example. I will be going over 5 variations of this and looking at how pip count and the cube are tied together. I will be going over these examples fairly quickly, but we will go back and review them in depth to help gain our insight into this type of position. This is variation 1, and to keep the video from getting too long, we are not going to count. I'm just going to tell you what the pip count is. So we're going to look at the pip count and we're going to look at proper cube action for 5 variations. In this variation, the pip count is 104 for white, 114 for green. And proper cube action here, despite the pip lead, is no double. So we have a 9.5% pip lead, and this is no double. This would be a big mistake to cube this. Our second variation would be this. And that would take our pip count to 99 to 14, 114, and give us a 15% race lead. Proper cube action here, this is a borderline double and a very easy take. So here, a 15% pip lead, that's pretty healthy. And our win percentage, which we'll go over later, is also pretty healthy. But this is only just barely a double. We're first now getting into that window of opportunity that is a double for us. The next variation of this is this position. Our pip count, 92. Our opponent's pip count, 114. Now our race lead is 24%. Nice healthy race lead. And this is a double take. It's an easy double. It's still a very easy take. This would be a very big mistake for green to drop, despite the fact that the opponent is down by 24%. Let's move on to the fourth variation. Now green's really behind. Now we have a pip count of 132 to 92. And that gives us a 43% race lead. That's a big number. Proper cube action for this position is double take. And the take is actually easy. It would be a double blunder for green to drop this position. Green should not be dropping this cube. With a 43% deficit in race, this is an easy take. And our last variation gives us pip count of 92 to 150. We have a 63% race lead. 63%. And the proper cube action here is double take. And it's actually a very easy take for green. It may not be over the board if you're faced with a decision like this, but even with a 63% deficit in race, this is an easy take. And if you contrast that to our first example, over 15%, and you're already looking at a drop. So this is very different than the first example. So let's dive a little deeper into these 5 variations. Let's review our 5 variations of this position and see how the numbers work for our cube. This is the first variation where we were 9.5% with a race lead and the action was no double take. Now if you're not familiar with these numbers, 0 is perfect play, no mistake, 80 is blunder. So 54 is our mistake if we do cube this position. This is no double. So that's a pretty big error. As our position improves, becomes a borderline take, 9 is very close to 0, and 339. So if green were to drop, it would be a mistake by 339. This is a double take. So almost a 4 times blunder for green to drop this. This is a very easy take for green. Our next variation we looked at, we had a 24% pip lead. This is a double take. It's doubled by 54. We don't want to miss this cube. You want to be cubing this position. And 219. Well, if 80 is blunder, this is almost a 3x blunder, a triple blunder if green were to drop this. So it's very important, if you're on green side, to know that this is a take, an easy take at that. Our next variation, big change in the position. We jump up to a 43% pip lead, and we're watching our win and gammon percentage. We went from a 66% win percentage, 1.4% gammons. From that position, go to 70, 1.6, 72% win, 2.5% gammons. Now we're at 73% wins, 6.5% gammons, almost 3 to 4 times the amount of gammons that we win in this position, and it's still a double take. It's a real big mistake if we miss this cube. 156, it's about 160. It's a double blunder for green to drop this position. This is still a very easy take. And looking at our last variation, now we're at a 63% race lead. We win 72% of the time. We win a gammon. We win 2 points 14% of the time. It's still a double take, and the take is 82. So it's a full blunder for green to drop this position. And that's hard to see. When you're first starting to play this game, that is a very difficult thing to see. And what's interesting about this, as it relates to this video, because we're talking about pip counting, is I've seen experienced players, some very, very good players, know that they need a reasonable pip lead to cube this position. But when they're on the other side of the board, I watch them count the pips. Now, if you're down by 58 pips, you're down by 63%, and it's still a take, it's a reasonable question to say, if that's still a take, why am I bothering counting the pips? And that is a very reasonable question. In fact, from green side, you do not have to count the pips. Now, you still may want to know where you're at, and you can do a quick estimation, which will be the second part of this video. But the fact that I see people counting the pips shows a lack of understanding of these types of positions, and that's not a negative thing. Backgammon is a very difficult game, and this is very specific to this contact type position where one player has completely escaped their checkers, at least to the 13 point, and the other player has an anchor, and they're still fighting to break free, or hopefully getting a shot, hitting a shot, and having their game completely turn around to a winning game. So, if you're able to recognize you need to count from this side of the board to know if you have a cube or not, and you recognize that the pip count has almost no bearing, relatively, if you're on the other side of the board, when you're looking if this is a take or not, it's much more of a positional take, you're going to save a lot of time. Because if you do an estimate from white's point of view, and you're up 30%, you know you have an easy cube, and you know you're not going to spend too much time as green counting this position, because you're just going to look at the strength of your board and your anchor to determine if this is a take or not. And our third and final example, a quick look into the start of a game. We win the opening roll with 6-5, run out to the 13 point. Our opponent responds with 1-2. Split their checkers in the back, bring a checker down for building. We roll 6-5 again, we're out to the 13 point, and our opponent again rolls 1-2. They decide to make the 11 point and slot their 5 point, prepping for the future. Now, we just rolled 6-5, 6-5, our opponent rolled really small, we have a race lead, but we have nothing built, so we decide not to cube, and now we roll 5-5. We have an overstacked 13 point, we can't hit on this checker. We decide to just play 2 checkers with our 4 dice down to the 3 point. Our opponent, again, rolls 1-2. Builds their board, and we know we have a race lead. We've been rolling big, our opponent has been rolling small. Is this enough to cube? In this position, we have a pip lead of 33 pips. So we have a 26% race lead. We win 66% of the time, and we win a gammon 17% of the time. This is still not a double, but it is close. It's a no double take. By 23, it's a no double, so very close. If you made this cube, this wouldn't be a very large error, but it is a no double and a super easy take for our opponent. So we decide not to cube. We roll 5-5 again. Bring 2 checkers down to the 8 point. And we finally hit on our 1 point, putting our opponent on the bar. And our opponent rolls 5-4. They come off with a 5, and they make their 4 point. We still have a race lead. We actually have a larger race lead. Now, do we have a cube? Now in this position, we're leading by 45 pips. We have a 43% pip lead. We win 67% of the time. We win a gammon well over 20% of the time. And this is a double take. The double's by 113, so more than a blunder if we miss this cube. And our opponent can't drop this. This is a take. If they drop this, it's a double blunder. This example again brings up the question, if the pip lead is that big, why are we bothering counting pips? But this is important because from the cubing side, you always seem to want to know where the pip lead is. From the taking side, as we've seen in the last example, the second example, and this example, the third example, it's not as much of a factor when there's still a lot of contact in the game. And building a library of positions that you're familiar with, where you understand where you need to count pips, where you don't need to count pips, and where an estimate of pips is good enough, will save you a lot of time. And you often see these positions as they're developing. You already know where you're at as far as how much effort you're going to put into pip counting, and it's time. If you're not counting pips, you're able to look at other parts of the board. So that ends the example parts, and we are going to now talk about race estimation. Race estimation. With experience, you will recognize some positions where you don't need a real accurate count. You may think in a position is tie, you just like confirmation of this, or you're way ahead or way behind in the pip lead, and you just want to check to make sure that's true. There's no need for an accurate count. Very often an estimate will do just as well. And you save a lot of time when you do an estimate. Now when I do an estimate, I'm just looking for groups. For example, this is very close to this. That's just 50. No hesitation, just move on. 3 checkers, 40, 40. It's off by 1. No problem, 40. 3 checkers here, 40. 2 checkers across, 25, not perfect, close enough. 4 checkers across, 50. It's that quick. So what race estimation is, it's pip counting, just allowing yourself to be slightly off. Let's do 3 examples. First of 3 quick examples for race estimation. Group of 10, round 5, 50. 4 checkers across from each other, 50. 50 and 50 is 100, 110, 115 is my estimate. For the opponent's side, this is close to 3 and 3, 75, 50. So 125, missing 5, 120. Second example of an approximate count. This is very close to this. 10 checkers around 1 point. 50. 50 is 100, a little more. And this is close to 10, so 50, 50. And 10 is 110 plus a few, so 113, let's say. For our opponent, very close to this, a little more than 75. So 75 and 40 is 115 plus a few, missing 5, so 112. Our third and final example for estimation. Shift 2, this is 50, this is 40, 90. For our opponent, it is 55. 3 of these is 40. So 55 and 40 is 95, 105, 110 plus 3, 113 approximate. Last part of this video, a little memory trick, something that will help you when you're counting live. And something we've probably all experienced is where we've counted our side of the board, counted our opponent's side of the board, then we come back and we realize we don't remember what our count is. So here's a little trick to help you do that. I use the points as 10 value. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, and 120. And I use my fingers as numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, if you want to remember a number, you simply put one of your fingers right behind the board. So for example, 6 is 60, this finger is 7, so this is 67. 45 would be 40, 45. 103 would be 103. 39, 72, 81. Super simple trick to help you remember what your pip count was. In this video, we addressed how to use the pip count to help us with cube decisions. In the next video, the 8th video, we will address how to use the pip count to help us with checker moves. Feel free to like and subscribe and share this video if you found it useful.